Circuit Court Judge in Milwaukee County, and on behalf of the Milwaukee Bar Association, I want to welcome all of you to the 2020 City Attorney Forum. I want to start out by thanking the Milwaukee Bar Association for hosting this forum. They've sponsored pre-election forums for over 25 years, and they do that because of their commitment to an informed electorate. I also want to thank media outlets who are here, and I would also indicate that this entire forum is being streamed live by the Milwaukee Bar Association. I'd like to thank Incumbent City Attorney Grant Langley and Attorney Tearman Spencer, the candidates who are seeking election as Milwaukee City Attorney, for being here today to address their candidacy and to answer your questions. I'd first like to explain the format that we're going to follow. Each candidate is given 2 minutes for opening remarks, and the determination as to who goes first in opening statements, who goes first in closing statements, was decided just a few moments ago by a coin toss. You, members of the audience, will have an opportunity to submit questions for the candidates. We've got cards at the end of the table, so if you want to submit a question, get a card, write it out, raise your hand, and a member of the Milwaukee Bar Association staff will pick it up, and the questions will be submitted to me. Your questions have to be addressed to both candidates. We don't want questions just addressed to a single. They've got to be questions that both candidates can answer. I will vet the questions for appropriateness. Your questions can be hard-hitting, but they do have to be respectful and they do have to be appropriate. I then submit the questions that come from the audience to our moderator, and the moderator makes the ultimate decision as to which questions get asked, because we oftentimes get many questions. The answers will be given by both candidates. At the conclusion, each candidate will be given an opportunity to make a 1-minute closing statement. And our moderator is going to enforce the time limits. Our moderator is Mary Spikuza. She is an investigative reporter, currently for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, previously worked for I believe it was the Wisconsin State Journal. For the past decade, she's been covering government and covering politics. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Mary Spikuza.
Thanks so much for having me. I have the honor of introducing both candidates, and then we're going to start with opening statements. Grant F. Langley was first elected Milwaukee City Attorney in 1984. Prior to his election, Langley served as an assistant city attorney for 13 years. He's a member of the American Bar Association, the State Bar of Wisconsin, and the Milwaukee Bar Association. He is a past chair of the Wisconsin State Bar's Board of Governors and a past president of its Government Lawyers Division. He is also a member of the International Municipal Lawyers Association. Langley leads an office of 38 attorneys who perform all the legal work for the City of Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Board of School Directors, and the Housing Authority of the City of Milwaukee. The legal practice areas covered by the City Attorney's Office include real estate development, employment and labor law, pension and deferred compensation, civil rights and tort litigation, business licensing, code enforcement, nuisance abatement, elections, ethics, public records, and open meetings law, housing, school law, contracting, and procurement. It's a lot. Langley's achievements have been recognized with awards from the American Bar Association, the State Bar of Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Bar Association, the Housing Authority of the City of Milwaukee, and other professional organizations. His office recently received a 2019 Diversity and Inclusion and Trailblazer Award from the State Bar of Wisconsin. Tearman Spencer. Born and raised in Milwaukee, Spencer earned an engineering degree from the University of Southern California and became an award-winning safety engineer, focusing on transportation infrastructure, including dams, bridges, tunnels, and rail systems, working all over the country. He ensured maintenance on refineries was done safely and oversaw safety professionals on the cleanup of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. Spencer was then diagnosed with a degenerative condition that confined him to a wheelchair, and while striving to recover, earned a master's in business administration from Golden Gate University. He later received a law degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Spencer returned to Milwaukee and opened a successful law practice, handling real estate and business cases and protecting individuals against big banks. More recently, he has focused on defending the rights of consumers and winning millions of dollars in settlements and verdicts for his clients. Spencer is committed to community leadership, including serving on the board of Community Brainstorming Conference and as a member of the Felmers-Chaney Advisory Board. He also completed the FBI Citizens Academy and is active in the FBI Citizens Academy Alumni Association. Thank you both for coming. There was a coin toss, and Mr. Spencer, you're first with your opening statement.
Thank you. I want to thank the Bar Association for hosting us and having us here, and thank all of you for being here on this glorious morning. I'm Tearman Spencer, and I'm running for Milwaukee City Attorney, and I hope to be the next City Attorney here. You know, over the last year, I really contemplated why I was running. So I had to take a close look at the last 50 years or so here in the city. And I've identified several different systemic problems that really need close review and change. One of them has been the idea of the customer service that we offer the citizens of Milwaukee. And I feel there's a real problem in that area that need to be rectified and ameliorated. Second is, we have real issues concerning our police and our community relationships. It's going to take a great deal to make the requisite changes for that, and I think we need to start focusing on that to get it done. Also, we need to improve the equity and economic development. I think it's crucial that we do that, and I think a lot of time and effort need to be done that have not been done over the last 4 or 5 decades. I have a great deal of respect for Mr. Langley and his public service and his dedication to Milwaukee, but I believe strongly in holding our elected officials accountable for what they do. For too long, we've had a city attorney who have not been very visible in our community and who is now only being visible because he's being challenged for his job. I think that's a problem. And now, for the first time in many years, he's finally showing up to our community events because of said reasons. In February, we had a primary. I won the primary. I won the primary in such a manner that was reflective of what the city wants and the change that's very needed. They spoke. Regardless from the east side to the west side and any parts in between, they want change. Change is inevitable, and we cannot wait, and I'm here and running to make that change.
Thank you.
Again, I want to thank the Milwaukee Bar for holding this forum. I'm sure it will be very informative for you and for all of those who see the replay. I decided to have the second spot for opening statement because I wanted to hear what my opponent had to say about what he wants to do for the city attorney's office. And I heard nothing. I heard nothing at all. I heard some general statements about customer service. I'm not sure what that means. I had heard general statements about police-community relations. I don't know what that means. And general statements about the necessity for economic development. I assume he's referring to outside of downtown. Again, very vague comments and little to suggest what he means to do, what he wants to do for the city attorney's office, what changes he wants to make. A little history lesson. As was indicated, I was an assistant city attorney for 13 years. I practiced in virtually every area of law, municipal law, in city government during that 13-year period. I was frustrated, as were many lawyers in my office, about the politicization of the office. The former city attorney at the time was much too close to the politicians and doing things that the politicians wanted. I decided I wanted to have a city attorney's office that was independent, nonpartisan, an office that provided legal guidance, and leave it to the Common Council, the mayor, and others to make policy decisions. I think I have succeeded in doing that.
Thank you. We're going to move on to questions at this point, and then we will have a chance for closing statements at the end.
We would not be allowed to rebut the statements.
Do you rebut opening statements? We don't do rebuttals for
Okay.
opening statements, but you should get a chance in some of your
Sure.
answers to respond to. Thank you. So this is a question for both of you. Mr. Langley, you've been a city attorney for 35 years. Why do you want to continue? And then next, Mr. Spencer, why do you want to be city attorney? So, Mr. Langley, if you could go first.
I want to continue because there's more to be done. We're never done. There's always room for improvement. There are always ways we can make the office better. But more significantly, there are things that are happening in the city right now that require our attention. Specifically, I'm talking about the upcoming Democratic National Convention. That is a huge project for my office. And I can't imagine having a person who has no background in the practice of municipal law taking over an office that is literally on a daily basis making decisions that will ensure that we have a successful convention. In fact, I had a meeting this morning with my legal team talking about what we need to accomplish over the next few weeks regarding the DNC. There were 9 lawyers there. I simply can't imagine having someone with no municipal law background stepping into that office and assuming the responsibilities that I have right now to ensure that we have a successful DNC. That's one of the major reasons why I wanted to continue running. Another is that there have been a number of retirements in the city attorney's office, which means new lawyers have come in and replaced those who have retired. I want to mentor those lawyers. I want to lead those lawyers. I want to show them my view of how the city attorney's office should operate in city government. I want to continue my policy of nonpartisanship, ethics, doing the best job that we can to provide legal services to the city, and leave the policy decisions to the mayor and the common council and others. That's the job of the city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer.
Yes, let me start by stating in his tenure, that's getting to be closely 40 years running the office. I like to think that you have some very competent lawyers in that office, and I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are lawyers there with 15, 20 years tenure that can do the job in his absence. To say that he need to be there for DNC, sir, I think is appalling. I said I respected you, but time is time. It's time to move. Time for change. To think that you have to be here to guide those attorneys for the DNC is, again, appalling. We are very educated people in this room, and it's not like being on the Hill with number 45, being this brilliant intellect. We can get the job done with the lawyers in that office and under different leadership. One of the problems we have that you want to skirt and we're going to deal with later, under your tenure for 40 years, just recently we had another problem here with this overrun cost for police misconduct. Now we're facing somewhere in the near $40 million in 2 years, almost your tenure. So to project in front of everyone that you need to be there under your leadership to make this happen, again, is appalling. You're saying that your guidance for these attorneys who's been there 15, 20 years cannot stand up and be in your absence to help guide us through the DNC. But let me tell you, when I become the city attorney, you're more than welcome to become a consultant of counsel. If you truly care about the city, you can come back and give your expertise. But to say that's a reason that you need to be there on that ham, no, sir. It's time for change. And change is inevitable, and change will happen. So why I want to be here is because I think those requisite changes are now needed for someone with different vision, someone with different insight, someone who knows how to systematically, proactively look at these issues and resolve them. I don't think we need to just continue with the same old thing. It's time for change.
Could I rebut that?
30 seconds.
Again, you've heard absolutely nothing to suggest why he is in a position to take over an office of 38 lawyers. The DNC is a critical matter for the city of Milwaukee, and it has to be successful, and we're going to do our best to see that it's successful. I remember meeting Mr. Tearman for the first time at the City of Milwaukee birthday party, and he said to me, you know, if I wasn't running, I'd vote for you. Well, here's your chance to vote for me, because I'm the one that can run that office, I can lead that office, I am in the best position to lead 38 lawyers and to ensure that the city gets its best legal service. It's not just the assistants, it's the leadership that those assistants get, and I'm providing that leadership, and I will continue providing that leadership.
I think what we missed was the operative if I wasn't running. And sir, I would have voted from you out of muscle memory because there was no one else on the ballot. But to say that I have offered nothing here, I've managed over 60 employees in my capacity on numerous projects. I've had projects extend well over $10, $11 million up under my budget, well exceed the budget of the city attorney's office now. So with respect to my experience, I think yours and mine are not comparable. Yes, you've been in the office, sir, but it's been stagnant. It's been stagnant for a long time. What I bring to the office is new leadership, new vision, new direction. I can proactively challenge these issues that you have let go by. Now, we're facing $40 million that the citizens have to pay. With this great leadership of yours, how come you have not even looked at that to curtail it? You know, there's other issues that we have to get in depth with. We got infrastructure financing. We have bond issues. So let's not come here and invite a smokescreen. Let's talk substantive issues and let folks know exactly what you've been doing for 50 years. We need not cover it up. Ma'am, we went over a couple of minutes there. Second, she brought the card up a couple of times. So please, let us be consistent with the timekeeping.
I let you do a rebuttal to the rebuttal, which is typically not allowed, but you jumped in and I didn't want to interrupt you, but we do want to, there are a lot of questions that we want to get to. But thank you. What would you say are your 3 biggest accomplishments in your legal career? And Mr. Spencer, if you could go first.
Well, I've managed to level the playing field for many of my clients. I became their voice when they didn't have a voice. I've had suits here where folks were in the process of losing their business, their homes, and I managed to deal with the institutions to level that, to make sure that those things did not take place. So after doing that and spending 15 years or so, 10 years in the real estate area, I decided I had to shift my gears where I seen other inequities. And being a victim of a tragic incident, it caused me to be in a wheelchair for 5 years. And I realized those folks needed the representation from a different perspective, from someone who can talk from experience, from what a serious accident can cause. So I decided to shift arenas there, and I think I've done a great job in helping a number of people in this city to get themselves whole again and to be able to be productive individuals in the city of Milwaukee so they can come back and contribute more to the city. So those, I say, are some of my biggest contributions as a lawyer. It allows me to sleep at night and to know that I'm leaving a legacy for those who can't do for themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Langley?
Once again, I'm sure that my opponent has nice things to say about his clients, but he's provided you with no specifics on what he's done, just generalities. That's not enough. Let's go back to the late 90s and about 2000, when the city's pension system was, in some regards or in some quarters, thought to be overfunded. There was litigation brought by the Milwaukee Police Association trying to get a significant share of that overfunding. I negotiated a settlement with all of the unions in the city, including the Milwaukee Police Association, the police supervisors, and all general city employees, that benefited all employees, not just members of the Milwaukee Police Association, but benefited all employees who were employed by the city through the year 2000. More recently, you have heard about the settlement with the American Civil Liberties Union on the stop and frisk policies of the Milwaukee Police Department. There was a settlement of that litigation, and I negotiated the settlement with the ACLU. I did it with the assistance of others, but the fact is I was the lead negotiator. So I have accomplished things in the city attorney's office, specific things that I can point to and say I'm very proud of what I was able to accomplish. And members of my office were proud of what I was able to accomplish. They were very congratulatory. And they are wonderful lawyers. To suggest that somehow this is not an active, proactive office is simply wrong. We do many, many things for the benefit of this city and its citizens, many things, and we'll get into those hopefully if we have time.
Thank you.
May I? Rebuttal?
Rebuttal?
Yes.
30 seconds.
Sir, again, you've been there for a half a century about. What have you done lately? Now, let's not talk about what we've done. I have so many achievements that I've managed to gain throughout my history, not just as an engineer, but as a lawyer. But let's talk more relevant to now, to the today and now. We are faced in this city with cost overruns. Just this week, again, I mentioned to you the $1.3 million settlement, coupled with the other $37 million in the last 2 years. What are we doing? Your expertise, sir. Let's talk about relevance. Let's talk about now.
I'm going to move on to the next question. Mr. Langley, you were criticized by some in the press for your answer in the Sterling Brown lawsuit. Some in that case accused you of blaming the victim. Do you have any regrets in how you handled or how you answered that lawsuit? And Mr. Spencer, how would you have handled it differently? Mr. Langley, please go.
No, I have no regrets, and I think the answer was mischaracterized. Understand that in litigation such as that, it's absolutely necessary when you answer a complaint that you put in all your affirmative defenses or you waive defenses. We put in that affirmative defense because had we not put it in, it may have been malpractice. And I was not about to commit malpractice. There was no discovery in the case up to that point, merely an answer to a complaint. And in order to preserve the substance of that affirmative defense, we needed to plead it, and whether or not there's any validity to that defense will be determined by discovery if the case isn't resolved. But any lawyer would know that if you don't put in an affirmative defense like that, you waive it. And I was not about to waive any affirmative defense in that case. I recognize, and you've probably read, that the city is trying to settle the case, but if the matter goes to trial, and if discovery is completed, we will determine whether or not there's the necessity to pursue that affirmative defense. But I was not about to waive it.
Thank you.
Mr. Langley, your positions and your posture is very evident in your decision making. Unfortunately, it's not beneficial to the city. Now, with respect to that case, I think you should have approached it differently. You should have been more in line with the mayor, and maybe we could have had that resolved by now. Sometimes, when it's blatantly clear that the fault is there, we need not spend 4 and 5 years litigating at the cost and expense of the city. So, with respect to how you approach these cases, it boggles my mind, and especially for you to sit up here and justify that affirmative defenses. When it's blatantly clear and you can possibly settle that case at an earlier time to save the city money, why are we not doing that? You know, one thing is to maintain a certain posture, fine, but your posture is costing us so much that we cannot afford it. You're a great attorney, but your philosophy is wrong. It's time for change, sir. We need to be able to save that money, redirect that money in other areas. We don't need to have that same attitude with respect to how we're going to deal with cases. If there's clear-cut liability, we need to be able to negotiate that in such a manner where it's going to be most effective financially. We want to optimize the utilization of our lawyers and our time. Redirect that money. Let's not build up other expenses, and then we have to go back and justify. You're not addressing any of those. We have very brilliant, smart lawyers here. And we know you have great lawyers in the office.
Thank you.
But there's something amiss in that office, and I can only point to direction. It's time, sir. It's time for change, and it's time to have another approach to save us money and to resolve these issues.
Brief rebuttal. With respect to the Sterling Brown matter, I mentioned to you that the city has made an offer of judgment of $400,000. The city made that offer of judgment. In every step of the way, I have worked with the mayor and the common council. Every step of the way. Every decision that has been made working with my clients. It's not a decision that I made alone. It's a decision that I may recommend, but it's not a decision that I make alone. It's up to my clients as how best to proceed with the cases that he's talking about. And I consult with my clients every step of the way in that litigation and in all other significant litigation. That's my obligation as a lawyer.
Thank you. Next question. Mr. Spencer, as city attorney, you will have to defend both the city and police officers accused of civil rights violations where the officers deny wrongdoing. Do you think you could defend the case on the basis of qualified immunity when the facts of the case are undisputed?
Yes, I do. But I'm going to take a little time to go back and rebut the last statement he made. As a city attorney, what I will do, and it's incumbent upon me to be able to consult with my clients, whether it's the mayor or any other department head. It's incumbent upon me to convince them the right thing to do, which way to go with respect to the law. So if I cannot convince them that we need to settle this, then it's problematic for me. So I think we have to evaluate our skill sets to determine whether or not we're capable of giving the right advice as we move forward. And it becomes pretty clear about being given advice to policies and what's going to be the best for the city and making sure that they understand what's best for us. Now, to address your statement, yes, unequivocally I will be able to. I have no problem with respect to that. Mr. Langley?
Mr. Langley, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, I did not hear anything about qualified immunity. Do you know what qualified immunity is? Do you know what it is when we defend police officers and raise the issue of qualified immunity? I don't think you do, because you don't have any experience in that area. And a lot of what we do is litigation in federal court representing police officers, and in many of those cases, if not all of them, we raise the question of qualified immunity. I am obligated by law to represent police officers when they're sued and they're acting in the scope of their employment. Generally, I believe those officers. If I don't believe them, it may be that I will have to retain outside counsel for them because we have a dispute. But generally, we represent those officers, we rely on those officers, we rely on them to tell the truth, and it's our obligation to provide the best legal service we can in defense of those police officers, and we do that every day. You don't hear about the cases that we win, you only hear about the cases that we lose. We win a lot of them, a lot of them. The ones you read about are the ones that where we're not successful. I believe in the jury system. I don't agree with the jury in this case, but the jury has spoken, and we will live with that. But I can tell you that we spend a lot of time in my office training police officers on civil rights law. We do that. We do our best to make sure that they are up to date on all of the civil rights law. That's our job. I don't just sit back and wait for these cases to come in. I provide the training that they need.
Thank you. I think we're out of time.
May I rebut that?
If you have 30 seconds.
I'll do 30 seconds. Now, sir, with respect to whether or not I know where that immunity is, yes, I do. And let's take that a little further. You went to Marquette, it's a very good school. I went to Madison, very good school. Turn out good lawyers. But now when you start talking about your judgment and what you need to do with respect to bringing in outside counsel, again, I'm challenging your judgment, which I think is problematic. There's a little thing called in furtherance of a crime. And when you think through certain things, if you see something very obvious is wrong, bring in outside counsel. But again, the problem has been you don't see anything wrong with the behavior. And I think it's obvious you don't see anything wrong with the behavior. It's time for change, sir. It's time to get someone with a clear vision that is not biased in their views for Milwaukee.
You're simply wrong. In many, many cases, we determine that there's inappropriate behavior and outside the scope of employment, and we refuse to provide representation. Where we do provide representation is because we are obligated under law to do that. And where we have a conflict with an individual officer, I will seek outside counsel to represent that officer. If it's an obligation that we have under law, I will see to it that the officer gets appropriate representation. But that's our job.
I'm going to jump in because I think the next question addresses some of this, and Mr. Langley, if you could answer first. What does the city attorney's office presently do well? What are its strengths? And what doesn't it do well, or weaknesses, what it should do better?
Well, as you have heard from my opponent, I guess I have a pretty good office. Some very, very good lawyers who are dedicated to the city of Milwaukee and to the residents of the city of Milwaukee. All of them, each and every one of them, are dedicated to doing the best job that they can for the residents of the city. I don't know that we have any weaknesses. I'm not sure that we do, because as I look around and look at the lawyers who are in the office, I see strength. I don't see weakness. We are some of the best lawyers in the state in terms of municipal law. Not only do we know the law, we teach the law. For example, public records and open meetings. We wrote the book. We wrote the book. And we train both department heads, members of the common council, the mayor, anyone we can in the city about the obligations that they have under public records and open meetings. And we train people across the state, lawyers across the state, because we are the experts. And I can mention other areas of municipal law where we are recognized as the experts. That's what it's all about, to have a good law office. I'm not sure there are any weaknesses. Maybe I could use a few more lawyers, because not only do we represent the city, but we represent the public schools and the city's pension fund and the housing authority. City and MPS are two of the largest corporations in the state. They have 7,000 employees each. That's a tremendous responsibility for 38 lawyers in city government to provide the legal representation those entities are entitled to.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer?
Yes, Mr. Langley, I said you were well-versed in the office. You've been there 50 years. I give you credit for that. But with respect to you writing the book, sir, it's time for a rewrite. How arrogant of you to say that there is no weakness in that office. Yes, you have some fine attorneys, but sir, you are the weakness. You need to look in the mirror, sir. It's time. It's time to own up to the inadequacies of the office. Now, whether you agree or not, let the citizens be the judgment. Let the community be the judgment.
Are you talking about my age?
No, I'm not talking about your age. I'm talking about your performance. Now, you're talking and you're highlighting certain areas that are great, but there are obvious areas that need improvement. that's constantly in the news, and you yourself, to find that oblivion, that's not a weakness, there's something wrong with that thinking, to me. Something totally wrong. The dots are not being connected. So, again, I'll capitulate that there are some fine lawyers in there, but it's time for new leadership, new direction, new change. We need to start addressing some of these things that you must obviously be purposely omitting. But we cannot continue on that same
Such as?
path. Such as, sir, that $1.3 million the other day. How did you allow your attorney to argue about someone making more children? How did you let that happen?
That's not what he said.
Well, listen, regardless, we're going to infer part of the litigation. Now, my point is, one after another. Now, we haven't even dealt with the Sterling, but continually you're obfuscating these issues, and you're talking about all that you've done. No one's going to know more about what takes place in the back room than you. You've been there for half a century. So for me to sit up here and to argue with you or debate substantive issues about what goes on in that office, be futile. But the reality of it is, what you're doing is not good enough for the city anymore. It is. I mean, you should really consider retiring. Do it while you're on top. You know, right now it's at a point that we need change, and you're just not cutting the mustard, in my opinion. Citizens have spoke in their opinion. You're not cutting it now too. Time to move on, sir. Change is inevitable, and change can't wait.
You said I should move while I'm on top. Well, believe me, I am on top, and I'm not about to move.
Well, then we just have to move you.
Next question, Mr. Spencer, if you could go first. In recent years, the relationship and interactions between the mayor and the Common Council have become, at times, very political. What do you see as the city attorney's role in that relationship?
Again, the city attorney's role is to influence the policy. My opponent would talk, and he always talk about keeping politics out of the office, but he also keep policy out of the office. We need to open up those lines of communication and do the job that the city attorney need to do. He need to consult. He need to guide. It is vitally important that we guide those offices and those individuals that's comprising those roles into the direction that they need to be able to rely upon each other and our word that they can work together better. So it's an absence of what's been taking place. But I tell you, when I'm in that office, I would open up dialogue. I would create a line of communication. And I think I would be able to perpetuate an understanding and a better working relationship between the two. Now, I've spent many a times with the mayor discussing certain things, and I'm not going to discuss here, but he's a man that's open. He's open to reason. And the reason why things are not done is, I can only assume and speculate, is he have not been reasoned with. And hearing the arrogance of what's been expounded right here, I understand why. I think it's clear.
I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. I can tell you that I have an excellent working relationship with the mayor. I have an excellent working relationship with the president of the Common Council, and I consult with them on a very regular basis, as do many of the lawyers in my office. We have a good working relationship with the mayor and the Common Council. Remember what I said at the beginning: independence, expertise. The reason that I am respected by the mayor and by members of the Common Council is because I have demonstrated those things. We are independent. We are there to provide you with the best legal services that we can, to guide you on policy matters, but the policy decisions are up to you. But believe me, we consult with the mayor, the Common Council, department heads, others, all the time. Daily, we do that. To suggest that somehow there's an issue there is simply not correct.
Are you
The
finished?
decisions that we make are made in consultation with the mayor and the Common Council, and it literally on a daily basis.
Are you done now?
Yep.
Well, again, you know, where I come from, and I keep getting reminded of this. Folks, and please, In life, you can get dazzled by brilliance, or you can get baffled by the aroma of male bovine feces, and it's getting kind of odorous in here. And I'm not going to try to BS you, but with respect to this great working relationship, sir, we just had an issue with opiates and the opiates epidemic. The council had approved moving forward to joining the litigation. You said sessile, not moving on that.
I said what?
You said sessile, no motion. You sat back and was inactive with responding to that, as if you had to be prodded to join in, that we could recover, the city of Milwaukee could recover from that, the same issue with the opiate crisis. So let us not talk about things that you think they don't know about. Let's talk about it all. Bring it out.
Can I respond to that?
Or should I? We'll move on to the next question, but we can circle back to opioids. Please give an example of a large dollar value or otherwise significant legal matter you have handled. And Mr. Langley, if you could go first.
Well, one of the most significant issues that we have on a regular basis, first of all, we need to protect the tax base. And I have several lawyers in my office working with me on tax assessment litigation. People don't read a lot about those types of things in the newspaper. But believe me, we are saving the city literally millions of dollars in taxes when we handle our tax assessment cases. Those cases are where property owners challenge their assessments, and their assessments result in a determination of what appropriate real estate taxes are. We have been very successful over the last few years in handling tax assessment cases, either through judgments or through settlements, and we have saved the city literally millions of dollars in taxes.
Thank you.
Yes, you have. Kind of the Robin Hood effect, I guess, in reverse. We have the indigent and the poor who challenges their taxes when they go up. Those who are at least able to afford it. And you handle these cases, and yes, you're very successful, putting the burden back on the citizen. You know, if we became a little more economic thinking and being able to generate revenue outside of the box, it might be a little bit better, but that's going to require a little education. Now, I think there's a problem when we look at that and when you talk about that, but what you omit again is you save the city millions of dollars in the tax assessment cases. Sir, your expertise, your longevity. What about these cases, Sterling Brown, the case that just occurred? You're not saving money from that area. Money can be saved if you reduce the time of litigation. Money can be saved when it's obvious, when a city vehicle rear ends another person's car. Why do we litigate 2-3 years? Why? When it's obvious where the fault lies. Why? You know, it becomes a question now to shift your gears and shift your thinking. Maybe, just perhaps maybe, if that was negotiated, we might have saved some money in the litigation time. We might have even saved some money on the settlement. And I'll tell you for a fact, folks have made offers to settle cases with the office for said incidents, which turn out to be half, or sometimes even more than half. You pay out 2 and 3 times more by litigating the cure in and out. 2 or 3 years.
Do you have an example?
Oh, I have more than some examples. I have specifics.
All right.
No, but I'm not going to put specifics here, but I'll be more than
What?
willing. I will be more than willing to post them into the news.
Let's hear the
I will be more willing to post them in the news when I do my interview, sir. I have the cases. I'm not going to just expound something that's not true. Have the gallery laugh. You yourself know. So we can move on, but I will present it, and I will publish it.
I didn't hear you answer the question that was asked.
Sir, I do not work for the city. I have not worked for the city.
I'm going to jump in and ask the next question. I want to get in some audience questions, which we've started doing. Do you believe that Milwaukee police should be allowed to force arrestees to undergo medical procedures, such as having their stomachs pumped, in search for evidence without a warrant, or in the case of a minor, permission of a parent? And I believe, Mr. Spencer, you're first.
You want to repeat that question again?
Sure. This is an audience question.
Yes.
Do you believe that Milwaukee police should be allowed to force arrestees to undergo medical procedures, such as having their stomachs pumped, in search of evidence without a warrant, or in the case of a minor, permission of a parent?
No, I don't believe that that's appropriate. I mean, to open yourself up for those kind of liabilities are absurd. I don't know how that question got forward. I don't think we should give anyone, police included, the right to pump someone's stomach in search of evidence. I think we're opening up a can of worms, and it could get the city into more litigation and cost issues where we wouldn't want to go down that road. So no, I don't agree with that. I could not agree with that. And I think we need to re-examine whoever think that that's possible. Now, if you want to qualify that and you want to put it in such a way as in an effort to save a life, then maybe we can deal with that from a different perspective. But in search of evidence, not today, not tomorrow, and never.
Mr. Langley?
Because we're running out of time, I'll say that generally I agree with his answer and we should move on.
Okay. Mr. Langley, you're first for this one. What, if any, role do you believe the city attorney can play in increasing inclusion of minorities, women, and people with disabilities in purchasing, procurement, and employment with the city of Milwaukee and in the city in general? This is another audience question.
The city attorney has worked with the Common Council and the mayor in developing certain policies and practices for the benefit of residents of the city. We have a residence preference program. We have a business preference program. We have a number of programs designed to encourage city residents to work on projects in the city, and we have programs to ensure that businesses from the city participate in city projects. These two programs have been extremely successful. Just look at Northwestern Mutual, just look at Fiserv Forum. The fact is that we are doing a lot, and the ideas, the development, the drafting came from my office. We did the grunt work. We did the work to ensure that these programs were lawful. We made sure that the legislative record was sufficient. And in one case, we were sued over one of these programs, and we successfully defended the program. So we are involved as lawyers in ensuring that programs like this benefit the citizens of the city of Milwaukee, the businesses of the city of Milwaukee. We want to encourage development in the city, and we want to encourage developers to use city residents and to use city business. It's a great thing, and it works.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer?
You know, it's getting kind of deep in here, but I guess it's indicative of your thinking to interject what you've done in the programs. The question was geared to you, sir. I think there's a moral obligation for anyone in office, if they see a disparity, that they need to speak up, especially as a counsel for the parties concerned. Now, the job isn't always to hide behind what's being implemented or a program. Sometimes as a good lawyer and as a good counselor, we need to go the extra mile to show these agencies how they can improve legally, how they can get it done legally without hiding behind a program. The question was geared to you and what you would do, not about the programs that are being implemented. So yes, as a city attorney, and I see such inequities, I'm going to be very vocal. I'm going to come to the table with programs. I'm going to show them a way that we can accomplish what needs to be accomplished legally without degrading anything else that's being done. So I stand faster and I stand firm to it. And I think we need someone in office that's going to feel the need and hear the voices of everyone in Milwaukee, not just a selective few, or not just business. We need to be a little more inclusive. It's problematic now. We need to be a little more transparent, which is problematic now. We need to be visible, which is problematic now. We need to be able to identify these problems, proactively approach these problems with resolutions, not hide behind an existing program that's ineffective. A counselor should counsel. A learned man should share his learning to resolve problems, and that's what we should be there to do.
I need to rebut.
If we can keep it under 30 seconds.
I can keep it under 30 seconds. I can't, what is he talking about?
Do I need to draw pictures for you?
Very successful. We work behind the scenes to ensure that these programs are implemented. They are successful. We're doing exactly what you suggest, except that we are accomplishing something. We've got it done. It's working. We have done it in a way that is lawful. We've done it in a way that people in the city of Milwaukee succeed. Businesses and individuals working on these projects.
Can I rebut the rebut, please?
We're going to try to, we're almost out of time, so we're trying to not rebut the rebuttals.
Sure,
but
sure.
Just I'm going to, do I have time for one more question before closing? Okay. What would you do if the mayor wanted to pursue one policy and the common council another? And I believe that is Mr. Spencer.
I would probably try to analyze what the policy is and bring the concerning parties together so that the dialogue can be met with what is best for all. I spent all my career as a system safety engineer identifying problems, interfacing problems, so that the result of the interfacing come out to be a win-win. In my language, it's fail-safe. Same approach systematically to this is no different. We bring the opposing parties together and we identify all the critical paths which potential outcomes can come, and we lean it to the outcome that we want by using probabilities and factoring out all the other ideas and possible occurrences where we can reach the outcome that we want. So what I would do is bring them both together, the parties, and mediate it in such a manner where when we leave the room, everyone would be satisfied and it would be for the betterment of the city. So it wouldn't be that the mayor would be happy or the common council. It would be what's best for the city of Milwaukee.
Mr. Langley?
Well, I wish it was that simple. It's not quite that simple. One of the things I've earned in the 36 years that I've been city attorney is respect. I know how to work with the mayor. I know how to work with the common council. And by the way, the common council are 15 members, not one. They don't normally act as a unit. They have different views on different matters. It's up to the city attorney to provide the best guidance that he or she can to the mayor, to the common council, advise them on what their legal options are, and try to find common ground. But the fact is, in order to effectively deal with elected officials, you have to be an elected official who has the respect of those that you're dealing with. And I think I can fairly say that I have the respect of the mayor and the common council. Members of my staff have the respect of the mayor and the common council. And we are in a position to work with them to resolve their differences, and we do that. We do that on a regular basis. They're our clients. You know, people say, who is your client? That's a tough question to answer for a municipal lawyer. Who is the client? Generally, the client is the mayor and the common council acting together.
Are you done?
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, the question about having respect from all of the folks you mentioned, I think we're always entitled to our opinions, but from the folks I queried, that may not necessarily be so. Folks work with people to get along and move forward, but that does not necessitate respect. Secondly, from what I recall, if you want to get the council to move forward, it takes a majority. You don't have to get all 15 voting the same way. So I don't think it's that difficult to pass any kind of legislation or to get a group of folks with different ideologies and views on the same page. Now, it may be challenging, but it's not as difficult as you make it to be. I don't believe.
We're going to go on to closing statements because we're almost out of time. Thanks so much to everybody for being here. Mr. Langley, you are up first for closing statements, sir.
And how long do we have? Just a minute?
1 minute.
I said at the beginning, and I'll mention it again. Listen to the two of us and decide who is in the best position to be the elected city attorney of this community. I love the city of Milwaukee. I love my job. I love the people I work with. I have not heard anything from my opponent to suggest that he is truly qualified to run an office of 38 lawyers representing some of the largest corporate entities in the state of Wisconsin, and we do that. I have not heard anything. What in his background prepares him to do the things that we do on a daily basis? I look around at the lawyers in this room who are in my office, and I work with each and every one of them every day. He would walk in with no experience, no background in the practice of municipal law and expect to lead a law office of 38 lawyers. 38 lawyers.
Sir?
I am very proud of what I've accomplished, and again, I have not heard anything. He's a very nice man, but I have not heard anything from my opponent to suggest that he is qualified to step into the role that I'm in, the leadership that I provide.
Mr. Spencer?
Sir, again, I like you, Langley, but let me be clear. You're not qualified anymore to lead that team of lawyers. Sure, your time has passed, which is evident by the decisions that are being made currently. And unfortunately, that is the case. But I do like you. I think you're a good guy. You're a gentleman. But that's not what we need right now. What we need now is someone that can lead that office with a new vision, a new passion. And to say that you don't see where my qualifications are to lead an office of 38 people. Sir, I've managed over 68 people at a time, engineers. So if you want to equate lawyers to engineers, I think my engineer friends will kind of look at you a little different. But at any rate, I am a lawyer, a qualified attorney, educated like you. Not only that, sir, I bring what you don't have. I bring the energy, the vision, and the capacity to get it done. Now, granted, I cannot compete with your 50 years of experience in that office, no. And I'll never get that 50 years. I don't think anyone should be there 50 years. I think we need to have a office where we can train lawyers to get them autonomous to run that office in my absence. Not to say that I need to be there to run an office. Sir, something's very wrong with your thinking. You're a fine attorney, but your time has passed. We do not need you there, sir. But now, if you feel you really have to be at the DNC, I would openly extend an opportunity for you to come as counsel, for you to be a consultant, or come visit for the 3 days. But that does not necessitate you being at the helm again for 4 more years. We cannot take 4 more years. Change is inevitable, and change cannot work, sir. It's time.
As we bring this forum to a close, I want to thank Ms. Spikuza for moderating today's forum. I want to thank the Milwaukee Bar Association, and in particular Katie Borowski, for all the hard work that they did to be able to put this forum on. I want to thank you, the electorate, for being here to submit questions and to hear from the candidates on your own, as opposed to hearing something from someone else or hearing it in the media. I think these forums are critical for people to be able to make evaluations and to make a determination as to who they want to vote for. Finally, I want to thank our candidates. I want to thank Mr. Langley, I want to thank Mr. Spencer for being here and for addressing you and answering your questions. Now, I want you to know the Milwaukee Bar Association has 2 more forums that it's going to be putting on this election season. On March 12th, Thursday, March 12th, there's going to be the second and final Supreme Court Judicial Forum. Justice Daniel Kelly and Judge Jill Karofsky will be here and participate in that forum to address the audience and to answer questions. And then finally, there will be a Circuit Court Judicial Forum on Monday, March 16th. There are 2 contested judicial races in the Circuit Court of Milwaukee County, Branch 5 and Branch 29. The candidates in Branch 5 are Judge Paul Dudinsky and Attorney Brett Blamy, and in Branch 29, Judge Daniel Gabler and Attorney Rebecca Kiefer. Those 2 forums will be held at noon on those 2 dates. Finally, I want to remind all of you that the spring election date is April 7th. And I want to remind you to vote. I remind you to speak to your friends, speak to your relatives. Tell them to vote. From my perspective, voting is not merely a right. It's a duty that you owe to your community if you really care about your courts, if you care about your government. So April 7th, vote if you want, vote if you don't want, but vote.